Welcome back to Conscious Corner podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Sholnick, and today we're exploring a topic that feels especially timely given the busyness of the season. My guest is Denise Robinson, a former employment litigator who went on to become a global diversity and inclusion professional and now leads the Stillness Center, LLC, where she helps lawyers and other professionals bring mindfulness and contemplative practices into their daily lives. Denise also draws on her experience as a yoga teacher for over 15 years to bring a unique perspective on the connection between belonging and well-being and how cultivating both can help us thrive in our families, in our workplaces, and in a world that often feels divided. In our conversation, we'll talk about what it takes to maintain a sense of sanity while parenting school-age children and running a business, how mindfulness can help us navigate stress and polarization, and the role belonging plays in fostering resilience and connection. I think you'll find Denise's insights both practical and deeply grounding. So let's dive in. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Really pleased to be here.
Such an honor to have you here and a joy. And being a parent myself, I know how chaotic this season can feel with school being back in full swing and the holidays upon us, the end of the year demands, depending on what career you're in, and amid it all, we also are trying to run successful businesses. So I'm curious how mindfulness supports you in finding balance in this busy season between parenting and professional life.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you again for having me. The way that mindfulness supports me in the midst of all of the things that you just mentioned and so much more, right?
Mhm.
Because just when we think we have our day ahead planned out or our week ahead planned out, something kind of blows up and we have to deal with it.
Right.
And so I think the central way that mindfulness helps me is to really I am learning
Hmm.
to accept the fact that things are just chaotic. They are hectic. And it doesn't mean it will always be that way. So one of the things that I really try to work on is this is this way for now,
Mm.
or I'm not doing this yet, so that I can remind myself that things change.
Yeah.
And the more I resist what is happening right now, really the bigger that monster of the chaos
Yeah.
becomes when I just kind of surrender to the fact that I have a lot going on. That helps me to see one, what are some of the stories, frankly, I'm telling myself about all the stuff that's going on,
Yeah.
some of which are true, other stories are not.
Hmm.
Um, what are some things that perhaps I can ask for help with, or just take off my plate altogether? Often there are not a lot of things that fit into either one of those categories,
Yeah.
but sometimes there are, and just that pause that mindfulness cultivates within us over time and with practice allows me to sort of get out the judgment
Yeah.
of the chaos
Yeah.
and just accept that it is, and then allows me to be able to take some intentional action around what to do, if anything, about it.
Yeah, I love how you acknowledge that we can allow things to kind of unfold as they are because they are anyhow. And
Mhm.
the more, at least I find in my experience, the more we fight the experience, the more we fall into the story like, of course this is happening, or why me, or we
Totally.
resist it, we can stir up a lot more agitation and suffering for ourselves. I know this is just
Mhm.
making me think of something that happened just in the last few days. I had my day mapped out just so. My husband was away in Nashville for a work conference for the bulk of the the school work week, and I
Mhm.
was I was solo parenting, and then I mapped out, okay, he's going to get back from the airport and he's going to be home at this time. So it takes some X amount of time to get home from the airport, and then by this point it's going to be my other part of the day to be in work mode, and I'm going to plan out X, Y, and Z for the week. And sure enough, his flight was canceled.
Of course.
And then he got another flight, and because there was bad weather in the Philadelphia
Mm.
area, they couldn't take off from Nashville. So
Oh, no.
needless to say, what I had mapped out for myself for that second half of the day as being really active,
Right. Your time.
productive work
Mm-hmm.
time, it went out the
Mm-hmm.
window. And
Right.
so that to your point, that pause, there's a choice point. If we're not able to notice how reactive and pissed off we're getting about the
That's right.
situation,
Mm-hmm.
then we just feed the fire. But if we can pause and see what's happening, allow it because it's here anyhow, then we
Mm-hmm.
can open ourselves up to some more creative and adaptive possibilities. So for me,
Absolutely.
it just took sort of like, okay, I can reach out to this mom. Maybe she can take my youngest
Mm-hmm.
one for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I can give my kids like the they wanted a little bit more game time, or
There
I
you
can
go.
like loosen the
Yes,
rein,
that's
and
right.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very supportive. That's what helped me to allow what was very much happening in the moment, to notice how I was relating to that. And then with that clear seeing, I was able to find ways to support myself, to support the situation. And I ended up getting done just about everything that I needed or wanted to.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how great story. And I feel I can relate.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something like that happens pretty regularly. And yeah, it's just I love what you said about
Yeah.
loosening the reins
Yeah.
because again it goes to that point of when we grasp so hard onto something or just can't kind of just allowing that loop to go over and over and over again in our
Hmm.
heads without the awareness, it really does create a worse situation than we began with. And so a lot of times it really is just about kind of backing away from it,
Hmm.
pausing, can I see this more clearly and proceed?
I like to highlight, because I know you mentioned this a few times in just the few minutes that we've been on together, but the stories and the
Yes.
loops. And
Mm-hmm.
without mindfulness, it's really easy to get lost in the stories, in the inner narrative. And to your point, sometimes there's some validity to the stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes there's not.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I know as a parent, there are so many schedules, there's so many places to take our kids to and from. And in trying to map out our schedules on top of our to-do list for our personal
Right.
lives, for our work obligations, that we can feel like we're prisoners of the mind, where we're
Correct.
constantly trying to strategize and make ends meet, and all the
Mm-hmm.
while like keep our head above water. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I know that that too can
Mm-hmm.
cause some more agitation
Mm-hmm.
and some rigidity in the body and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Being that you're trained as a yoga teacher, I'm curious if there are any specific practices or rituals that you have that allow us to drop into the body more fully,
Mm-hmm.
because unlike the mind, which can take us on a trip into the
Quite a ride.
future, yeah, quite a ride. It can time travel into the future, back into the
Yes.
past.
Yes.
The body, as you know, is always in the here and now, and sometimes just by allowing attention to rest on the sense of the body, feeling
Yes.
more embodied presence, that can
Mm.
really bring us, or at least invite a bit more ease.
Yeah.
So are there any little tricks you have up your sleeve that you can share with us about how we can connect more fully with our bodies amidst all the busyness in our lives and in our minds?
Sure, sure. So the thing that comes to mind is actually not a practice first. I promise I will get to some practical tips here in a moment. But what comes to mind first is that I'm fortunate to have had both my parents were educators, K through
Mhm.
12, and actually both of them worked after their career in K through 12, worked a little bit at the college level. And my dad in particular was a PE teacher, physical education teacher. And so, and a coach, track and field, cross country, all the things. And
Yeah.
so in my house, and then I should also mention, because it's relevant to when I come to the specific tips, my mother is the one who introduced me to yoga,
Oh.
specifically yoga asana practice back in the early 80s before, and I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, which
Mhm.
is not a place even now that has, yoga studios on every corner.
Yeah.
I can't even name a yoga studio
It's not like being
there
in New
right
York
now.
City.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Or, in the DC area,
Yeah.
where I am. But she had a friend who was also a teacher, same school. They were, teaching in the same school. And that friend had a studio in the basement of her home.
Mhm.
And so my mom would, go and practice. And I would go with her, like I did with many things. I mention all of that to say that for me, the fortune of all of that is that I grew up in a household where there was not a hierarchy between the body and the mind, or spirit, I'll add to that. And what I mean by that is we, in the context of the United States anyway, that's the only place I've ever lived for any, extended period of time other than being a study abroad student in Australia, which is also, sort of a West kind of cultural society.
Mhm.
Um, we in this culture, in many, many ways, prioritize the mind
Yeah.
over the body, or at least there are lots of ways in which we subjugate. The body is kind of bad, or uh, it you're not treated the same way. If you're a great athlete, sure, but people tend to think of athletes, for example, as not also smart, right?
Right.
In a classical kind of academic way, even though that's just, again, those stories, right,
Yeah.
that we
Right.
tell
Right. Right.
ourselves. And so growing up in a household where, one's physical fitness, your mental health, your educational achievements and so on were really treated as all important,
Mhm.
um, to creating a whole life has really helped me to um, just I guess I tend to go to the body when I am caught up, when I
Yeah.
recognize anyway that I'm
Yeah.
caught up in my mind, right? Because I definitely I went to, law school like you and many other people listening,
Mhm.
and it's because of that training, and frankly the training before that I was a philosophy major, and then went out to practice and still work with lawyers and so on. There's just so much that we are valued really based
Mhm.
upon kind of just what's going on. I'm going to say the mind, even though the mind really encompasses much more than just the brain.
Yeah.
Um, but when I recognize that I'm just living basically in my head, it's pretty, I don't know if it's easy, but the thing that comes to mind for me is like, okay, I need to do something physical
Yeah.
because again of that upbringing that I have. So I tend to have a lot of, tools at my disposal, and even more now because of being a yoga teacher and, having practiced for a really long time at this point. And so the first thing I will say, and this is backed up by research as well, that the the most efficient way to disrupt the chronic stress response. So
Yeah.
basically, so we need fight or flight when we are actually under threat. But what happens, like, threat as in, I don't know, like a dog chasing us, and it's like a rabid dog,
Yeah. Yeah.
real threats. The
Right.
problem is that many of us, because of just the world we live in right now, just, being a part of the modern world, and then of course
Mhm.
all the additional challenges we have going on right now with uncertainty and so on, then the professions that we are a part of, we
Yeah.
are often in fight or flight all the time, and that is not a normal condition for our, ourselves to
Hmm.
be in. And so what research, and that creates this, stress is fine. It's part of what gets us out of bed in the morning, but
Right.
chronic stress is really a problem. And so what research has shown is that movement is, and it really does mean, it doesn't have to mean like going out for a run, which I do as well, a lifelong
Yeah.
runner, but it means perhaps doing more standing than we are sitting, for
Right.
example, with these, kind of knowledge worker jobs where we're always at a desk and then our shoulders are rolling forward and the head
Hmm.
is, moving forward and kind of really creating a lot of misalignment in our posture and also affects our breath and so on. So what the research shows is that movement, period,
Hmm.
the more of it, the better, of course, but movement is the most efficient way to disrupt that chronic stress cycle. And just to get people, who are like, what research, where can you find
Yep.
this? There's a lot more than what I could, cite to you here, but
Yeah.
a great place to go for this if you're also interested in, books. There's a book called Burnout, and it's by a pair of sisters. Their last name is Nagoski, so Nagoski, I believe. And one I believe is like a psychologist, and the other one is I believe in the performing arts. I think music, if I'm not mistaken. Both, very highly educated. They kind of come together, blended their professions, and then drawn on the research of others to pull together this book that's about what is burnout? What are we talking about with this issue of chronic stress? And then what are some ways to disrupt it? And so that's one of the places where, if people are interested in more, you can find out. So like I said, it can be something as simple as something I do very regularly. Like I said, standing up more often than I am sitting. Use your wearables if you have, a I'm not going to name brands, but if you have a device that will buzz you every, say, hour or something just to get up and move, please use that, right? Because we can all kind of get lost in our work or whatever it is that we're doing and just literally forget. My dad was somebody who would, just kind of like go through the day sometimes, and he would come home and be like, oh, I just kind of didn't have time and I forgot to eat. I'm like, how do you do that? Like,
My dad too. My dad
that's
too.
so
Like,
interesting.
I know you and I were talking about before we even hit the record button that my stomach I ate 2 hours ago, maybe
Yes.
even shorter than that, and like it's been growling, and like I'm like that's my cue, let's go. And my
Exactly.
my my dad worked really long days, like seven to
Yeah.
seven, and he'd come home
Mhm.
and it would be his first meal at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. I don't
Right.
know how,
I
but
don't either. I don't either. Although I kind of understand it now because of what we talked about in the beginning
right.
of, just like the busyness, right?
Yeah.
Of things. But why did I mention that? Just talking about how we can forget, right? Even to stand up, get up out of your chair. So please use the devices to help in that endeavor. And something I often do is just as simple as like rolling my shoulders. And so this is something that we do in yoga, but it doesn't,
Mhm.
have to specifically, there are lots of different practices that include this, but literally elevating the shoulders. So I'm doing it here. Elevating the shoulders helps if you can take a breath in with that. And then as your breath goes out, taking those shoulders back like your shoulder blades are trying to come together, and
Mhm.
then drop the shoulders down. And if I do that again, you might be able to see like my chest is now open more than it was before because again, being at computers and just our life, driving cars and so on has us in a what we call protracted
Uh-huh.
shoulder position very often. And then it also causes issues for like our spinal alignment. And so that in and of itself creates problems for the body and mind, by the way,
Yeah.
to be able to get the proper amount of oxygen and so on. And so with my open chest, I'm actually able to breathe
I was just
better,
gonna
which is going to help me. Yeah, go ahead,
I
please.
just no, I was actually doing it as you were showing
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
and talking about how to do it.
Talking about
And
it.
that
Yeah.
expansiveness, just the greater space between the shoulders, it opens the chest
Correct.
space. And I
Yes.
feel like I happen to, when I'm feeling stressed out or I'm in the busyness of an assignment or doing work, I notice how shallow my breathing can become.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm even holding, like in all the focusing
Yes.
and concentrating, I hold my breath.
Totally.
So sometimes even just like letting the shoulders melt back and down away from the ears and having that more
Mhm.
expansiveness, like physically between the shoulders, there's an
Correct.
opening and a releasing that I can feel
Yeah.
the breath. I can feel the exhale like a bit longer than before where it's kind of shallow. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. And there's
and
lots
I,
I could say, which I won't bore you all with, but there's physiological reasons for
Mhm.
what you just described, the release that
Yeah,
you felt, using that word, and the expansiveness. There's physiological reasons behind why you're sensing that, and
yeah,
how it then can impact help us with our work as well is, I think, really important. So yeah.
yeah. I also want to acknowledge that in terms of movement, I feel like sometimes people, even when they're taking better care of themselves and they're making time for small moments even of movement, there can be some judging that I'm not doing
Yes.
enough or I'm not doing it right. And
Yes.
in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program that I teach, we remind participants that it's not about having to get anywhere. It's more about resting into the movement and
Yes.
letting awareness come more fully into the movement
Hmm.
itself. And that just
Hmm.
not having to push ourselves to our limits, not having to do it a right or particular way, but just
Yes.
noticing what it's like if if we decide to maybe work from a standing desk, like what does it
Yeah.
feel like to notice the connection between the soles of the feet and the ground, maybe rocking back and forth or forward and back. And so
Exactly.
even little mini like micro doses of
Yes.
some type of movement and connection within the body can have a real stabilizing effect.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I
So important.
yeah,
It's really important because we are in a society that is about do more, right?
and
And that's
push,
not
push,
the
push.
goal. Yeah, that actually can have the opposite
Yeah.
effect that we're seeking. It really is about noticing. So I heard
Mhm.
you say that. So that's the first piece, really just creating more awareness, more consciousness.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
noticing, sensing what is going on in our bodies, because so very often we think of our senses as just kind of what we learned in maybe elementary school as like the five senses, sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. But
Yeah.
yet we also have other things. We have interoception, what's going on internally. What am I
Mhm.
feeling in my body? And then what can that tell me about like my, I don't know, mood state, for example, or proprioception, like where am I in space?
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
close am I to the desk that
Yeah.
I'm standing in front of, and so on. And so again, um, it really is not about um, doing more necessarily. It
Yeah.
is about just tuning into what it is that you need right now.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that can be so helpful in
yeah,
connecting more fully with the present moment and
exactly.
inclining ourselves in the direction of less stress, calming the
Correct.
nervous system, and really allowing ourselves to be more present for ourselves and for others. And I think you
Yeah.
also have a really unique background just based on your upbringing and what your parents really
Yeah.
role modeled for you, and then how you were able to carry that into your own life and the work that you're doing, which I know
Thank
that
you.
you're doing incredible work to help organizations think about the importance of connection and
Mm-hmm.
belonging and well-being. So I'd love to hear from you about
Yeah.
how some of these practices that we're talking about, how they can
Mm-hmm.
be incorporated into the workplace, and maybe some of the tools or the practices that you share with leaders and teams that can help them to cultivate a deeper sense of connection with themselves, with each
Yeah.
other, and a real sense of belonging in the workplace.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this connection between belonging and well-being and inclusion and all of that, because they really are, to me, and then again, there's research to support this, quite intertwined, but they're often not discussed together, although increasingly so. So I'm definitely hopeful in that respect.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about, I think, before we started recording, we were just talking about kind of the top couple of things that in I think a poll that you did,
Oh yeah.
when lawyers are feeling or just workers are feeling particularly stressed, like what helps them kind of
Yeah.
get out of it. And one of the things that you mentioned is that people said that connecting with someone with a friend or a work friend, right,
Yep.
who makes them laugh is one of those top things that really
Yep.
helps disrupt that stress cycle for them. And that is one of the things that I really focus on in this connection between belonging, which is about how people feel
Mm-hmm.
in a workplace, really any setting with others,
Yeah.
to the extent, do they feel connected? Do they feel like they are a part of whatever community that they are, workplace that they are within? Do they feel like they are co-creating that place? So do they feel like there is a contribution? It actually gets into the work of a term called mattering, out of I think positive psychology or
Mhm.
organizational psychology, this idea that like I'm both contributing value
Right.
and I feel valued. So belonging kind of gets wrapped up, and they're not exactly the same, but they certainly have components, right, of each
Like your
other.
external role, but like what's going on inside, like internally.
Exactly. The
Yeah. Okay.
feeling. That's what I really focus on with respect to belonging. So in the course of doing diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging work, I often define diversity as a fact, right? So any group of people is going to be diverse. We don't often
Right.
talk about it that way. It kind of gets connoted as, oh, we say diverse, and so we mean like people who are from underrepresented groups, but
Hmm.
that's not true.
Yeah.
Everyone, has these different social and cultural identities. So any group is diverse. So that's a
Uh,
fact.
right.
Inclusion is the act. So it's the work. What are we doing to
Hmm.
draw in that diversity to produce whatever it is that we're doing? As lawyers, we're serving, right, our
Right.
clients, the communities that we are a part of, and so on. So how can we harness the diversity that we have to help people feel like they can contribute
Hmm.
what it is that they come in the door with, that they don't have to leave important aspects of themselves at the door in order to do the work. In fact, we
Yeah.
want them to bring that to the forefront so we can solve problems
Like their
better.
full being, like not having
Exactly.
to tuck anything away,
Yep.
not having to highlight something over something else, like their whole
Whole
being
thing.
as they are. Yeah.
As they are. And it doesn't mean that, I don't show up the same way at, on Saturday morning with my at the farmer's market,
Right.
with my
Right.
daughter, that I do in a client training, right? But it does mean that the salient aspects of my identity should be able to be expressed
Hmm.
within the workplace. And thinking about this as a former employment lawyer, this might, connect with some members of who are listening to this. Think about it in terms of like, is there a legitimate business reason that we're asking people to, conform to this particular dress code, or this particular, you have to wear your hair in this particular way, or
Yeah.
some other aspect of like the code of conduct for a school or for a workplace? If there's really not a legitimate reason, if it has nothing to do with the product that we are creating or selling, or the service that we are creating or selling, then why are we asking people to do that? Why are we
Right.
asking them to leave an aspect that by and large is part of why they got hired
Hmm.
in the
Or
first place? Yeah, go
change who
ahead.
they are,
Yes,
change something from their being as they
that's
are.
correct. As
Yeah.
they are. So that's what we mean, by inclusion. We actually have to do work that's not a fact, right? Inclusion
Yeah.
is an act. We have to do things because as human beings, we tend to perceive difference as a threat. Like the more different it is from us, the more we tend to feel threatened by it. And so we actually have to do work to overcome it.
Yeah.
Equity is really more about fairness, right?
Mhm.
So are we giving people the resources that they need and so on so they have an opportunity um, to do their best work?
Yeah.
And that's going to look different for people depending upon the experiences that they are coming into a workplace or a school or something like that with. So that's also work
Yeah.
as well. And then belonging is the feeling. So to get back to what you were sort of clarifying earlier, is like, yes, this belonging is about that's the desired outcome, is how I often talk about it, of all that work
Right.
of diversity, equity, inclusion. Is like we want people to feel that they are a part of this thing, that they are helping to co-create this workplace, this practice, this whatever, this practice
Yeah.
group. And so in order to do that, we really do have to attend to the relationships. What are the ways in which we are helping people feel? So to your question about what do I talk with leaders about, I talk with them about the intentional actions that they have to take and not just rely on, oh, well, I have an open door, right?
Right.
So people can come to me. I'm a very nice person. I'm sure you are. But the people who work, within this organization, who are not at your level or who haven't had the benefit of, being around you for the 20 years you've been here or whatever it is, they don't know you. So there are
Yep.
things that you're going to have to do to cultivate a relationship, and that's going to require that you make people feel psychologically safe, that they can
Mhm.
actually trust that they can express a different opinion, right? Respectfully, of course. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
people can just behave any kind of way within, especially a workplace setting, but they need to feel safe, that they can both physically safe, of course, and then psychologically so within a workplace. They need to know that you actually care about them beyond just what it is, beyond their productivity.
Hmm.
That again, the things that they probably were hired for, all those neat experiences and stuff that they have on their resume or that they talked about in their interview, please demonstrate that you care about that as well.
Yeah.
In addition to getting the work done. So these are some of the ways in which I talk with, these are some of the things I say, I guess, when I'm working with leaders and organizations around what are we doing to cultivate relationship, because that is what's going to make people feel like they belong. It's not, I mean, the work is important, of course, but you're not going to get the best work out of people, or certainly not from a sustained standpoint. Like people may give you their best work for a time period, but if they're
Yeah.
not feeling connected to the organization or to you or to other people here, they are not going to stay. That's very
Yeah.
clear. Yeah,
And I think there's been an uptick in, you see the door swinging, like people come
exactly.
in and it wasn't maybe what it was painted out to be or as rosy as they hoped, or they're just not feeling as if there's a sense, there's not a sense of belonging. And
Exactly.
I talk about this, I've spoken about this on other episodes. I think that compared to people of my generation,
Hmm.
we kind of just sucked it up
Yes,
and we
totally.
just
We're in the same
threw it.
generation, I think. The
Yeah, I
suck up
mean,
generation. Yes, we did it.
it was like, okay, well, get the work done, do a good job. You can't pivot yet. You need to put in your time, but
Hmm.
it's different now. And I can't say that I disagree. I think it's a deep level of self-care that if you're
Yes.
not feeling that quality of belonging and safety and
Hmm.
connection, that you have every right to pivot. You don't have to worry
So
about it
true.
looking bad on a piece of paper because you jumped.
Yeah.
But I think it's a deep act of self-care.
Yes.
Um, and
That's
yeah, I think
powerful.
that was kind of
Yeah.
missing from the equation, at least the way I was conditioned to kind of grind it
Hmm.
out and just suck it up. And um, there wasn't as much of a validation and again,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's just the relationship I had with myself at that time before
Yeah,
I understood and practiced mindfulness, but that clear
sure.
seeing and knowing what's serving you, what's not serving you, what your needs are, and then knowing that
Mm-hmm.
you have every right to treat yourself, to open
Yes,
that gateway to what feels more nourishing and offers a greater sense of belonging. My son,
absolutely.
I have three sons, and the oldest is 15. The middle son is just started middle school, and my youngest son is in third grade. And he came home the other day. This made me think of you. He came home.
Oh,
He said, I didn't finish coloring it. It's not done, but it says be you.
love that.
And I love the message that
Yeah.
how great at such a young age, at 8 years
Mm-hmm.
old, to be able to teach these young students to
Yes,
embrace who you are, that you belong and you belong just as you are. So I
that's
feel
right.
like that culture, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of flavor is
Mm-hmm.
something that's really important, and it goes a long way. It helps people to want to stay, to want to
That's right.
be part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which ultimately helps the employer or the whatever the community is, right? The
Yeah.
group of people that you are a part of. The more people feel like they are able to take care of themselves
Hmm.
and that they are cared for. I know that's not a word that we hear very often, especially not
Yeah.
within the legal profession, and yet we are social animals. Even the introverts, and I'm one of them. Among us, we really do still need each other.
Hmm.
And anybody who's been a part of the legal profession for any amount of time will tell you that it is about relationships,
Yeah.
and but no, at least when I was in law school, um, that was not, I don't think that was ever
No.
mentioned or discussed or anything like that. And so I can see how we've gotten to a point where we're not talking about connection and belonging and all of that, why that might feel a little bit foreign. And yet, when we really think about it, this is a service profession. We are
Hmm.
interacting with people all of the time. And so, of course, relationships are going to be important. And the more we feel like we are cared for, not
Hmm.
just ourselves, but each other, the better that really those we serve will be, our communities will be, and so on.
Yeah. The word the words cared for,
Mm,
what they're
mm-hmm.
bringing up for me is that in order to feel cared for, I think we also have to connect with self-care. Like we have to know how
For
to take care
sure.
of ourselves, and
Yeah.
that ability to, going back to belonging, like feeling from inside
Yes.
out,
Yeah.
knowing how to take good care of ourselves, but also from the outside in, like, what do
Mm,
we need to feel cared for by others. I'm just to
mm,
kind of take a
that's good.
deeper dive into this, because I know you and I work with lawyers often, and
Yeah.
we understand, based on our respective backgrounds, that lawyers and leaders and those working in stressful professions,
Mm-hmm.
that they're under constant pressure,
Yes.
and they feel the pull to constantly produce and resolve and strategize. And with
Mm-hmm.
that sort of way of constant doing, that it's easy to get out of, to be out of balance, for there to be some
Sure.
type of imbalance, and lose sight of the importance of that social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just,
Yeah.
for people
Mm,
listening, whether it's owners of firms or leaders or heads of corporations, what are some
mm-hmm.
of the cues, or what are some of the signs that this imbalance, this lack
Mm.
of collective belonging, like what are some of the signs that people can look out for to actually know and become aware that it's affecting mental health and the overall performance of their teams?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think the first thing that's coming to mind, it really is, um, because it's much like we were talking about before. If we can recognize what's going on inside of ourselves, then it kind of to pause to be able to do that work
Mhm.
of, hey, what am I feeling? What is happening? And without the judgment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just what is. Same thing within an organization, is true. So organizations are made up of people. So
Mhm.
I often describe my work, especially in the belonging spaces, it is a form of change management, work, organizational change management, but all change, at least within the organization, is really going to have to start at that individual and interpersonal level because we, the people, are the ones who make up organizations. And so
Right.
doing that observation, if you will, of what is going on with this
Yeah.
organization? What are some of the signs that people are not feeling like they belong, where relationships either have not been developed or are breaking down, are good practices to
Yeah.
engage, I would say, for really any organizational leader, so that once you become aware of it, now you have some agency.
Right.
It brings to mind one of my favorite quotes, and I might get a piece of it wrong, but I will do my best here.
Welcome to my world. I tell my husband more and more. I feel like my mom. I get we were
Yeah,
talking about this too. I mess up
totally.
names and I say
Yes.
quotes wrong, but I won't
Yeah.
judge.
Thank you. Thank you. And please don't judge listeners. It's a James Baldwin quote, but he says, um, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed that is not faced.
Ooh,
And the way that I think about that is what I'm saying around awareness to agency. So we have to become aware of what's happening within
right,
ourselves, within our relationships, within our organizations, and so on, to really be able to have an opportunity to have that agency to make a choice,
right.
right? Going forward. Otherwise, it's just kind of like inertia. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just gonna
Mm-hmm.
kind of go along as it has, maybe getting worse.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that becoming aware is going to make it better. So there's no guarantees. I'm often asked, and especially again, belonging, when I'm brought in for ostensibly that kind of work, because I'm always talking about well-being as well, even if I'm
Yeah.
brought in just sort of belonging piece. But anyway, when I'm
It's
doing that
interconnected.
work, exactly, that's what
Yeah.
I'm constantly trying to say. But I often get asked, when will we know that we are kind of like done here
Mm-hmm.
around belonging? I'm like, there is no destination. We can't guarantee outcomes.
Right.
It is though, you can survey your folks,
Mm-hmm.
do the work of assessing how are people feeling within the organization. And so I would say, back to your original question here, um, you do have to be intentional about asking people how they're doing. Don't just assume that, oh, because I don't know, people smile in your face when you walk the halls. If you're back in the office or on the Zoom
Yeah.
meetings, people are showing up smiling, or that they are getting their tasks done on time and at a high level from a
Yeah.
from a quality standpoint. Don't assume that then also means that they are having a positive experience from a interpersonal standpoint within the workplace. Ask, right,
Mm-hmm.
how, and get trained professionals to help you do that asking. But nevertheless, I think this is a place where assumptions can be really dangerous. um, and be willing to, again, here comes mindfulness again, be willing to, even if you don't agree necessarily with the outcomes of
Yeah.
that assessment, because in my experience, especially as lawyers, we can often, if something doesn't gel with our own experience, it's something that all humans do, but I just think we have a special level of, maybe because of our training, we can poke holes, right?
Yeah.
in processes and in systems and outcomes and
Yeah.
so on, to accept that these, whatever is coming out of this assessment, this survey, these focus groups, et cetera, are the experiences that people have been willing to share as part
Mm-hmm.
of this process, even if it doesn't map onto what your experience has been or the people that you socialize with within
Mhm.
your workplace and so on. Be willing to accept that at least for some people, these are, the experiences that are
Yeah.
going on within the workplace. And then, you can go about the work of like I said, the sort of awareness then gives you some agency to be able
Mhm.
to, okay, see what we can do about this. Why is it that I'm having a very different experience here as a partner, in this law firm versus like our junior associates? Well, I bet if you think back to what it was like to be a junior associate, it might help with thinking about what can be some helpful, if not solutions, certainly ways to create a better environment for people where they feel like they can be themselves. And so I'm not sure if that answers. It was a long answer,
Yeah,
but
no, it does, and
it
I
just,
think it
yeah,
also
ask, I guess, is the highlight.
sorry,
Yeah.
I cut you off. What was
No,
that?
no, no. I was just saying that ask people what their experience
Yeah,
is,
I think the people who make up the firms and the companies that they're leaders. The leaders
Hmm.
are they want everyone underneath them to be getting great outcomes, but can sometimes get so caught up in getting a certain outcome that they're missing the big picture. They're
Yes.
missing that the culture is not great. We may,
Yeah.
their constituents may be getting the great results and the outcomes, but are they happy? Are they feeling valued? Are they feeling a deep sense of belonging? And so
Hmm.
until we're able to slow down
Yes.
as owners and leaders and take a more expansive view of what's happening here
Yes.
and what's this workplace culture like and being willing
Mhm.
to be, it takes a certain, I think, courageousness, because
For sure.
you're not necessarily going to get the answer that you want, and it might be
Yep.
different than what you think. You feel like things are vibing, but maybe someone's not.
Yeah.
But having the courage to ask, no,
Yes.
all the while knowing it may not be what you want to hear, but
Hmm.
to be
That's
willing to know that people have experiences beyond the experience you're having, and
mhm.
can we may not agree, like going back to what you said, we may not agree with what they're saying, but knowing it, this is how they're perceiving things.
Exactly.
It may not
Hmm.
be in alignment with how you are, but until leaders and heads of businesses are able or are willing to even go there, then
Yeah.
we're kind of going to be landlocked
Yes.
in a certain way that may not
Absolutely.
be the best way to optimize business,
Hmm.
or it's not
Or
sustainable.
school or whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's not sustainable. One thing that as you were speaking, I did think about a very specific thing that can be a kind of a canary, if you will, in the coal mine of
Mhm.
when a culture, a workplace, a school, or whatever, a family even, culture is breaking down around relationships where people are not feeling like they belong. Really
Mhm.
pay attention to attrition statistics. I think we talked very briefly about that a little bit earlier in our conversation, but I think it is important. I just literally had a conversation with a client last week where they, and I won't even describe the type of organization, but it's a workplace, and they just started measuring attrition, right? So
Yeah.
they measure the hiring and who's getting promoted and all of these things,
Mhm.
cross-tabulated and so on. But they were not until very recently looking at attrition. Of course, now they're like, whoa, there we have some work to do
Yeah.
here. And so even just being willing to look at those figures, even if it is, to your point, something that you may not get what the
Right.
results that you want to see. It may be the news may not be very positive, and yet if you don't have that information, then you're not going to have an opportunity really to change it.
The numbers don't lie. When you see
They
them on
don't.
paper, I mean, again,
Yep.
going back to mindfulness and our ability to be aware in the present. It's just another
Mm-hmm.
tool that we can use to become
Correct.
more aware of what's here in this moment. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
great suggestion. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that. And I just want to go back to, I know we kind of expanded and talked about companies collectively or organizations
Right.
collectively. But if
Mm-hmm.
there is an individual who today is
Yeah.
listening and they're just feeling completely overwhelmed by the
Yeah.
weight of the world, which is totally understandable,
Sure
especially
is.
now, this time of year. But whether it's their role as a parent, their professional role, whatever type of
Mm-hmm.
work it is, their whatever the profession is they're working in, maybe just the news, just the state of the world.
Yes.
What's
Mm-hmm.
one mindful step that they can take
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah. Hmm. I'm taking a breath, so I'm going to say breath.
Yeah.
I'm going to say to take a breath, which will give you an opportunity to pause.
Mhm.
And of course, we're breathing, right? As long as we're alive, we're breathing. And so, someone might be listening and saying, "Well, I am already taking a
Right.
breath." So, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is, to notice first
Mhm.
that you are breathing, because as you talked about, Courtney, and I have the same experience. Often when we're deep in it, whatever it is, with raising children or taking care of aging relatives in our work or whatever it is, we can
Yeah.
often hold our breath.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like a bracing kind of for against whatever it is that it's kind of has the potential, at least we think, right, to overwhelm us. We can hold our breath. And so first thing
Yeah.
is just to notice that you are breathing, even if it is shallow, that's okay, right?
Mhm.
That's part of the mindfulness piece as well to this of not just being present, but letting go of the judgment around what you find. So that breath is kind of coming in and out quickly. You can't really feel it down. And if you place your hands, and I would recommend this, placing your hands on your belly.
Mhm.
Um, and the diaphragm is doing the work, like that's the muscle involved in helping to kind of, help the lungs do the work of getting that air in and out. And when we're really stressed, like there can be just a lot of tightness
Mhm.
in the belly, in the chest, as we talked about earlier, doing the shoulder roll exercise. Um, and so just noticing like what is there. Maybe you feel nothing when you place your hands on your belly, and even though you are breathing, you're not really feeling a whole lot of movement there. And so we can move from that to, well, there are ways to get a little more breath in. So let me I like to count. I'm a fan of that. And so I'm going to take a 4 count in. So I'm going to count from 1 to 4, just breathing in through my nose and keep my hands on my belly and breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the top, maybe for a couple of seconds, and then release that breath for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, pause, a couple seconds, and just notice. What, if anything, did you feel? And you have to do it, a few cycles, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen with just one, long inhale and longer exhale, but over the course of a minute, if you can do that, say like 4 times, maybe you need to do a shorter inhale. Maybe it needs to
Mhm.
be like 3 seconds in and like 5 seconds out. What I'm getting at is that you are, over time, you keep doing it, you're going to start to feel the action of the diaphragm through, the movement of the belly expanding and contracting with your inhales and exhales. And then what you might start to notice is like, whew, all of a sudden my head feels a little like clearer than it
Yeah.
did before. Like I feel like I can think
Yeah. Yeah.
about whatever it is, whatever problem that I'm confronting right now. Something else came to mind. Oh, the reason why I'm suggesting for in response to this particular question, somebody who's feeling overwhelmed, that gets back to what I was, the reason why I'm specifically suggesting an extended exhale, because that's not
Yeah.
the only, sort of aspect of what is called pranayama, breath practice, and yoga. Um, there's lots of different breath practices. The extension of the exhale, though, triggers something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of fight or flight. So you
Hmm.
have autonomic nervous system, and autonomic kind of tells you something about it, right? Like it's the automatic aspect, if you will, of that branch, if you will, of our big, wide, amazing nervous system. And it has a couple of branches, one of them being sympathetic, which is fight or flight. And then parasympathetic is what we often refer to as rest and recharge or rest and
Hmm.
digest. And we're really from like if you think about where we're supposed to be, or, what's homeostasis for humans, it's the rest and digest. And we
Yeah.
can trigger that through the extension well, we can trigger it through our breath, period. But in specifically the parasympathetic nervous system can be triggered by the extension of the exhale. And that can help us, again, come out of that fight or flight. It's not going to happen with one cycle.
Yeah.
But over time of practicing, noticing, right? Like, okay, I
Hmm.
am breathing, feeling kind of shallow. What did I hear that woman tell me about? Placing my hands on my belly. Okay. And I feel the diaphragm moving. Maybe I'll start to count here. And then you'll start to notice other effects of that over time. So
These are
yeah,
really skillful, practical, quick tools that I
yeah.
know they really help me and in the attorneys that I work together with, they find them beneficial. I
Mhm.
will just add before I open back up to you to share some ways people can connect with you, but
Yeah,
sometimes it can feel it's not just lawyers, but
yeah,
the way that we're trained to think and we are so strategic and we are so cognitively
yes,
oriented that sometimes
yes,
it can feel really foreign to feel the
yeah,
breath. I have
yeah, that's
some,
true.
yeah, clients are like, well, I know I'm breathing, I'm alive, but
Right.
where can I feel the breath? And I say, you can feel your breath, you can feel the shoulders breathing if
Yes,
you direct your attention anywhere you want, but what can be so helpful because again it can be a little daunting like how am I
yes.
supposed to do this exactly and what's right what's wrong, but sometimes just
The
getting away from
touch.
the desk
Yep.
and laying on the ground, and you
Yep.
mentioned this, but it
Yeah.
almost I feel like takes a little less efforting if we lie on our backs and it could
Yeah,
be the
that's a good
bed
one.
and put
Hmm.
the palms of our hands on the belly or even the chest,
Yes.
you may notice it's easier to feel
Right.
that rising and falling.
Yeah,
And
you may.
sometimes just that rhythm and just feeling the breath breathe itself, it can
Yes.
have a calming effect. So know that you don't have to
Mm.
stay in your chair. You can move
Right.
around, lie down.
Yeah. Can lie down.
So thank you.
Yeah.
I
I
think
love
it's
that.
something, yeah, the breath
Hmm.
is, as you said, as long as we're alive, the breath is always here for us, but it's something that gets pushed into the background. But when we can bring it into the foreground and really know that an incredible support that we can always turn to, then we can
Exactly.
make more use of it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much for
You're
that. And
welcome. You're welcome.
I want to share with, I know I've gotten so much value from just this short amount of time that I had with you, and you really helped just by parsing out the differences between diversity,
Mm.
equity, inclusion. Sometimes
Hmm.
I think it's easy to just kind of like clump it as like
Yes.
box it in
Acronym.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
know generally what it is, but to break
Yeah.
it down and to not only break it down, but to know how ways we can promote more of it and
Hmm.
that can help us at the end of the day to cultivate more belonging. That's really powerful stuff.
Thank
So
you. Thank
if
you.
anyone wants to find out more from
Yeah.
you, how can they connect with you or learn more about the work that you're doing at Still Center?
I would love to invite folks to connect with me through LinkedIn. So I'm my, Denise Robinson. If you put in like Denise Robinson, yoga or Denise Robinson, diversity, right? You will find my profile, and would love it if we can connect there. And also my website is The Still Center, so TheStillCenter.com. And there I have a bunch of different resources, including a couple of articles that I've written that specifically speak to the time of year that we are in right now, coming up on the holidays, and kind of ways to help ourselves, attend to ourselves, the self-care that we need, and in doing so, be able to have more space for others, to be able to care for each other. So I have a couple of articles on the website that address that specifically. I also have a newsletter, so would love it if you can subscribe to that newsletter. And if you do so, you will not only get the newsletter, but you'll get some free resources, including at least, a meditation. I kind of rotate them. And so there's a yoga nidra meditation right now, which is a form of it's an aspect of yoga, but it does not involve movement. So it's going to feel more like a meditation, very restful. You can feel like you can get a nap in about 10 minutes.
Ooh, I'm on it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's there if you subscribe to the newsletter. And so, yeah, those are a couple of the ways that I would love to engage with anyone who's listening and would like to know more.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure for all of our viewers and listeners, I'll put the links to what you shared in the show notes. So
Thanks.
easy lift for everyone. And I really enjoyed our time together. I have no doubt
Likewise.
that the wisdom and the tools that you shared during this time together are going to be supportive not only during this busy season and as we approach holidays and the craziness of our schedules between work and balancing in our children and everything else in between,
Yes.
but beyond,
Yeah.
I really appreciate all of this insight and
Mhm.
really wonderful resources. So
Thank
thank you
you.
again for your time. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers, and I wish everybody a happy season and look forward to learning more about your work, Denise. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Courtney. This was just a pleasure. Great.
Likewise. Take care.
Thanks.